For more than a decade now, the federally administered tribal areas of northwest Pakistan, known as FATA, have been unstable and dangerous. Bordering Afghanistan, the mountainous, inhospitable lands are home to Pashtun tribals and at least 6 recognized militant groups. Reporting FATA is a perilous assignment for any journalist to accept. The region has been targeted by American drone strikes ever since 2004. And the drone war is one of the toughest stories to get at in the so-called war on terror. Reporting on the effects of drone strikes on the ground, on the people there, has led to a number of journalists in the Northwest getting killed. FATA, and especially Waziristan on its southern edges, is militarized, locked down. Few reporters even try to go there anymore. The Listening Post's Meenakshi Ravi now with the story of one of them and what he's up against, reporting on the state of war in northwestern Pakistan.
North Waziristan, remote, difficult to navigate, the heart of the Pakistani Army's most recent campaign to root out militants, Operation Zarb-e-Azb, and the site of more than a decade of U.S. drone attacks. This is where Noor Behram works.
Noor Behram is a very unique journalist, local journalist from North Waziristan, who has shown tremendous courage in documenting a number of drone strikes.
By taking photos of survivors and families of victims right after an attack takes place. Actually, most of the photos that you see in the international media belong to Noor Behram.
Noor Behram was the first journalist who came to me saying, I have collected evidence of a huge number of civilians being killed. And that was a very unique perspective from a local journalist in Waziristan.
When the drone attack started, I saw a big difference between what was being reported and the actual reality on the ground. The breaking news would just say 5 or 6 terrorists have been killed in a drone attack. So I took it upon myself to give a voice to all those women and children who were killed. No one could call them terrorists or accuse them of participating in the fighting.
Behram's very presence and ability to do journalistic work in the federally administered tribal region is a feat of survival and smarts. Under the law, almost no local news outlets can operate in FATA. All the newspapers and magazines the locals read are produced on the outside, in Islamabad, Karachi, Lahore, Muzaffarabad, and brought in for distribution. There are no TV outlets based in FATA. There are 3 state-run radio stations and numerous underground radio outfits operating illegally. But journalism that interrogates the militants, the army, the US, co-opted tribes in the region, all of whom have a stake in FATA, is almost non-existent. And then there are the pressures and very real dangers of living and working amidst groups like the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, the Haqqani Network, and elements of ISIL or Daesh.
Coverage is terribly difficult, without a doubt. It's tough to get there as a regular Pakistani. It's even tougher to get there as a journalist. And then when you sort of cross past certain areas from mainland Pakistan, well, it becomes a free-for-all. Your safety is not guaranteed. Most journalists who have been killed in the last decade or so in Pakistan have ended up being killed inside these regions.
You ask me what are the pressures created by the army, the government and the other intelligence bodies? Firstly, these are all individual players. You cannot consider them as one unit. You cannot prepare for them as one unit. Then there are the Talibs and the dozens of other organizations working here. Al-Qaeda, the Uzbeks, foreign militias, even Daesh. It means there is a constant clash of agendas and someone is always unhappy. And that's why they pressurize us journalists.
So for instance, in 2006, Hayatullah Mahsood was killed. He was a journalist who had taken photos of missile parts of American Hellfire missiles. This was at a time when the US and Pakistan were both denying the fact that the US was bombing the tribal areas. And Hayatullah actually took photographs of these fragments and passed them on to a European press agency. The very next day, Hayatullah was disappeared for 5-6 months, and then his body was found shot to death.
That was 2006, one of the worst years for the media and FATA. when a total of 3 journalists were killed. And the pattern continued. In 2007, print correspondent Noor Hakim Khan, killed by a roadside bomb. In 2011, Nasrullah Khan Afridi of the Khyber News Agency, blown up in his car. And last year, the Taliban claimed responsibility for the murder of Mohammad Zaman Mahsoud. For Noor Behram and his colleagues, survival is job one.
This is a tribal region. At night, there's no communication or phone system in place to relay news. Another thing, journalists have no access to information. Nobody listens to you, nobody talks to you. The Taliban and Al-Qaeda will simply call us up if they need us. But when we need a comment from them, there's no way of finding them. With all these problems that we face, we have to be very cautious, because if we get anything wrong, the impact could be significant for us and for our careers.
I went and made contact with people in the different villages, and they became my sources. They would notify me whenever there was a drone attack in their area through walkie-talkie systems. They would tell me how many women and children have died, and I would go to the area and gather evidence. No one records how many women and children are killed. Everybody knows which terrorists died and which didn't, but no one asks about the women and children casualties.
Keeping track of the dead is a very inexact science. According to the UK-based Bureau of Investigative Journalism's drone project, since 2004, between 430 and 970 civilians have been killed in drone strikes in northwest Pakistan. Noor Behram tries to put faces and names to those statistics, turning cold data into real stories. Journalists working in FATA say it's like reporting from inside the crocodile's den. But not everyone is interested, not even in Pakistan.
The most unfortunate part of Noor Behram's work has been that it was not appreciated by local outlets. In Pakistani media, this is not a top priority, because the mainstream, especially English media, prioritize where their most readership is. So for example, Dawn is the leading English newspaper in Pakistan. Almost 60% to 70% of their readership is in Karachi. So for a person in Karachi, some drone strike happening in a remote area of Waziristan is not a priority.
The Pakistani media is facing a lot of threats and a lot of issues from a variety of forces. And so in that context, they have to be very careful in what they report and how they report. So you now have a situation where sometimes media houses will find it easier to publish a wire service report rather than publishing reported stories from their own journalists, and because it's safer.
What happens in Waziristan stays in Waziristan. That's been the logic primarily of both the security forces, the administration, as well as the bad guys. Stringers, local journalists are on their own, and they're between a rock and a hard place. The real challenge has been to walk that thin red line between your personal security, the sanctity of the Pakistani state, as well as your personal passion to tell the right story. It's been a very, very difficult story for all of us to tell, whether from mainland Pakistan or whether out in the mountains of Waziristan.